Urban Meyer is a disaster. He is a raging, screaming, steaming dumpster fire in Jacksonville, and everybody who knows where he came from. Hey, look, I preface this by saying I saw on Florida chat boards this week that they're talking about Urban coming back to Florida.
Oh, that'd be it.
Stop. My first words out of my mouth were, okay, let's bring back the guy who enabled Aaron Hernandez to eventually become a killer. Wow, you should have seen the reaction I got on that one. But
Well,
I'm gonna let you take it here on Urban Meyer because I think you've said it perfectly. The man is horribly overmatched.
the main thing at Florida is not that he won 2 national championships. It's that Percy Harvin and Aaron Hernandez didn't go to jail while they were in school. I mean, that way, think about all those 2 teams that won national championships. Somebody told me the other day that more than 40% of those players on those teams have been arrested and have spent time incarcerated since then. So it's I've covered Urban Meyer for now 18 years, and he's the same. He's full of hubris, and that's the thing that brings people down. He doesn't accept that there are other smart people in the room. And when you're like that, and you go off on your own tangents, what you are is 1-6, and that's and the win is against a bad Miami team, as nobody knows better than you guys. But but everybody here was like, oh, the Jaguars are on a roll. No, they're not. Miami's bad. The Jaguars are bad. Miami's bad. The Houston Texans are bad. The whole thing in the NFL, I've always thought it was funny. I mean, how many really good teams are there? Maybe 4 or 5, right? And then there's maybe 4 or 5 really bad teams at the bottom. So you're still talking about 22 teams there in the middle that feel like that they have a chance to go to the playoffs. How hard is it to become mediocre from bad? Well, if you're Jacksonville and you continue to make bad decisions, it's very difficult. I mean, there's nothing better than when your team is winning. It makes all your friends happy. It makes the players more accessible, the coaches more accessible. It becomes an easy job to cover it when they're winning.
Well, okay,
when they're
so
bad,
Khan has made a major mistake here. He's brought Meyer in. It's a dumpster fire, but there's people saying that he's going to get another year. So where do you go from here?
Yeah, no, Shad really likes him, and there's not a single game on the rest of the year that the opponents aren't looking at that and saying, okay, well, that's a win because it's Jacksonville. If you don't know who the homecoming opponent is, look in the mirror because the Jaguars are the homecoming opponent. That there's no question about that. This week against the Bills, they're 14.5-point underdog. And you know what? Unless it really rains on Sunday, the Bills will cover that. The Jaguars, they've got the part of the problem is Meyer, but the main problem is that they just don't have the talent level. The good news is Trevor Lawrence is the best player on the team. The bad news is Trevor Lawrence is the best player on the team. They've got a bunch of guys who are okay, but look at teams that win in the NFL. They have serviceable players, which the Jaguars have some, but they also have some stars. The Jaguars don't really have any stars, and they spend some of their free agent money on guys who were solid but not star players. They need a thumper on defense. I don't know why Meyer, who, he wins football games in college. I don't know why he thinks this offensive line is the answer. I know Travis Etienne was hurt in the preseason, but you cannot talk about that in the NFL because everybody is hurt in the league at some point. Everybody suffers injuries. And, the Jaguars need a wide receiver that the defense has to identify. Right now, they have a bunch of guys who are kind of the same, and they're okay. They're not great. They're all okay. When you go to practice, when Trevor Lawrence drops back to pass and throws it, he turns your head. You're like, whoa, did you see that? There's not a single wide receiver who does that on the Jaguars roster. And when you don't have that kind of separation, you don't have that kind of protection, you don't have that thumper on defense that the offense has to identify every time they come to the line of scrimmage, you're just not going to be a good team. I also hear constantly that the staff is not happy with Meyer and some of the things that he's doing. The head coach in the NFL really has to be almost a CEO. He's got to have an organizational plan. He's got to set the tone, and he's got to put things in place. Meyer came in relied on Trent Baalke, which is great. Hired an offensive coordinator and a quarterbacks coach in Brian Schottenheimer, who have been around the league some. But he constantly meddles in some of that. And, assistants and coordinators, they don't like that. They want to give me the lines to stay between, and I'll do that. But get out of my hair. And Meyer is sometimes in the drill zone on the field. Some people laud him for that. I think that just creates an atmosphere where coaches are like, this guy's not going to let me do my job. I'm out of here. I think at the end of the year, you'll see a big turnover on that staff.
Joey, let me come to you on this end because, again, I mentioned the fact that there's people saying that Urban needs to get back to college. Why would you want this flaming hot mess touching any program whatsoever? I mean, yeah, okay, they're going to come back and they're going to say, wait a minute, Ed. The guy's got national championships. He's got the title rings. He must be good. So let's deal with that. Why not? Why wouldn't you want Urban Meyer on board? The guy wins, right?
He wins, but at what cost? I mean, and it's a pattern we've seen over and over and over every stop he's been at. Yes, he can assemble a team that wins, but it never lasts. There's duplicitous actions that go on all the time. We've mentioned the troubles that his players get in, the legal troubles, and people turn the other way on this. So it's this self-repeating system that wherever he goes, it's the same thing. And to think that it would magically work in the NFL is another just huge fallacy that anybody could see coming from a million miles away, that this wasn't a good idea. But for whatever reason, the Jaguars chose to execute it.
Let's talk about that then. And you're right. Anybody could see it a million miles away. So in your opinion, why did Shad Khan hire Urban Meyer if you know that he's a disaster in the first place?
I suppose it was just a reach for relevance, a chance to put the Jaguars on the map, so to speak, and give them a little buzz. And maybe that lasted for a short time, but obviously that has moved on. But you go back through time with Spurrier to the Redskins and with other college coaches, it's this seeking a buzz or a crackle or something, and it never lasts because the culture of college football just doesn't translate to the NFL. The players can see through it. Ultimately, the fans can see through it, and that's probably what we're seeing happen in Jacksonville now.
Well, that's the next thing, George. We talk about the culture in between college football and pro football, and we know what the culture was at the University of Florida. Sam brought it up. It's well documented. We know what the culture was at Ohio State. We know that this is a guy who still likes to go out, stay away from his players, go out to a bar somewhere and get a lap dance, and not give a damn. So in the end, we're all sitting here going, he's wrong guy. He's got all kinds of problems. But the fans are still going to look, and so is Khan. He's going to look at that bottom line. Granted, they suck out loud right now, but they're going to say, "Oh, don't worry about it. It'll all work out. You got to give him some time. He's cleaning up a mess that was there before." Who are these delusional people, George?
I tell you, getting back to what you guys were talking about, to me, Urban is the sex and the sizzle, right? You get that magic because the track record says that. You can't deny that he's won at every place he's gone to in college. But as duly noted previously, it all falls apart. It's a house of cards because he brings in shady characters. He's a shady character himself. He's just not a truth teller by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, you better stop right there, young man. You're talking about a head coach in the National Football League or college football telling the truth. You are on double secret probation. You're out of here. That's silly me for thinking that. But anyway, put me in the corner here for 5 minutes, Ed. But in any case, Urban takes a little bit more of he takes the truth, and I think he dabbles more in lies than he does in truths. But anyway, yes.
That's the problem. Is that he has been successful, but the business model is flawed. The business model is flawed because of his moral character, because of the moral character of the players that he brings in. And certainly it's a different vibe in the Jaguars. He inherited a mess. Not all those guys in the locker room, there may be bad players. They're not necessarily bad people, but it's not going to work. And I think, if he had kept Tim Tebow, I think that they would be in playoff contention. That's just me talking. Crazy.
George
No.
Diaz, ladies and gentlemen, he's got a 2-drink minimum and a cover charge coming up this weekend in Orlando.
There you go. There you go. Well, you talk about crazy fan base. I'm sure that there's
Well,
a
wait a minute,
of
but there's
people
another phrase you brought into this that I'm gonna touch on. You use the phrase moral character. Come on. I mean, from a fan standpoint, from a fan standpoint, or a boss's standpoint, an owner and a CEO, but the fans especially, we've already got his moral character. It's out there. It's been public. You could have Urban Meyer caught in a compromising situation in a Kim Kardashian videotape, and that goes wild across the internet, and the news cycle hits. 2 days later, it's gone. Come on, George, let's be honest. Fans don't give a damn about moral character as long as you put wins on the table, or if you're a guy that we deified because you won 2 championships in Gainesville.
Yeah, and that's what it's been all about. Like I said, he goes and he wins. It all falls apart for obvious reasons, but hey, there's always the next stop, and fans have a very short-term memory. Maybe he should hook up with Aaron Rodgers. I think that'd be the perfect quarterback for him. Getting back to our original premise.
You want to talk about Urban Meyer and being at Urban Meyer's bar there in up in Ohio. Ask women what they thought about that video. And all of them said to me, including my wife, there's too much familiarity here. He knows that girl. And it turns out that he did a photo shoot. He knew that woman. And of course, that woman's mother said, I worry about her emotional well-being. Well, perhaps so. All of that is on the moral side, which in the NFL doesn't count. I mean, in college, the guys are still forming who they are. And I do think it's a coach's responsibility to try to point guys in the right direction. In the NFL, you're adults. You guys you want to go to strip clubs, whatever you want to do, as long as you're not breaking the law. If you can tackle and you can throw touchdown passes, we don't care. And the NFL is like that. I mean, that's fine. But what I heard around the league, and I'm still on the Hall of Fame committee from Jacksonville, was, wait a minute, he didn't fly back with the team? Yeah. I mean, that was the thing that everybody was just like, they've never even heard of that. No. And I agree. I mean, if you're making $8 million a year and you need to go back to your bar after playing in Cincinnati, you fly back with the team, you walk across the ramp, you get in a private jet and you fly back and you're there in another hour. I mean, you don't not come back when your team at the time was 0-4 and had just lost to Cincinnati. I mean, that was the thing that I heard from around the league, that people just couldn't believe that he didn't come back with the team. He said he cleared it with Trent Baalke and with Shad. And I can tell you, Shad likes the guy. The fact that he did not suspend Urban at least for a week without pay and send a clear message of what he expects out of his organization tells you about what they're thinking about down there, and it's not very clear thought. Shad needed he needed not just to say, well, he's got to earn back our trust, et cetera. He needed to met out some punishment there so that people understood that he was serious.
But
if I can interject, though, I agree with you, Sam, but I also see the other devil's advocate here. If he does suspend him, Urban's already on really shaky ground in that locker room. That message that he would send by suspending him, I think he really loses everybody in that locker room, because now the owner says, I don't trust you. And I look at it the other way, that I think it would unravel even more if he had suspended him, because then you're looking at a coach who, again, is already tenuous, has a very tenuous relationship in that locker room, and now his power is being cut even further. So, tough call. I agree with you, though. Certainly, not going back with that team is inexcusable.
And if he does suspend him for a week, though, George, he sends a clear message to the locker room. Hey, we're not going to put up with this kind of stuff in this franchise. But now players are like, well, I can do whatever, and I might get somebody to say something to me.
I think that's fair.
Any money?
Yeah, I think Sam said it. Sam said it best. There are players in the NFL. They know what you do and don't do, should do and shouldn't do. That was pretty clear. And when he pulled a stunt like that, every player in that Jacksonville locker room, every player around the NFL knew what that was all about. So regardless of suspension or no suspension, what Urban Meyer's all about was for everyone to see, and it's pretty obvious to not only Jacksonville but everyone around the league.
Well, isn't it fair? And I think, Sam, we talked about this pre-show a little bit, that whatever happens here in Jacksonville, you got to clean house. I mean, something's got to happen. I mean, whether it's Urban on down or whether it's all the assistants, whether it's somebody, but Khan's got to stop pussyfooting around here, and he's got to actually drop a hammer somewhere. Will he?
No. And he likes Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer will be the Jaguars coach next year unless something else, dramatically comes to light. But I mean, the Jaguars can go 1-16, and he's going to be their coach next year, and Trent Baalke is going to be their general manager. Now, whether or not, I think Schottenheimer's doing a good job with Trevor Lawrence, and I do think that Trevor Lawrence has the potential to be that Pro Bowl kind of really good player. I mean, it's a good thing he's a good guy, because he's putting up with a lot here these days, and he's taken a lot of grief that's not of his own doing. But Urban Meyer's going to be here. Shad likes him and thinks that he's got a plan, and he'll give him at least another year to try to execute.
Good luck with that plan. I mean,
Tino would have been open on a lot of those routes, by the way.
I'll tell you a couple things about the Jaguars, right? They drafted a punter in the 3rd round, okay? He's now kicking for Tampa Bay. That's one thing. The Jaguars from 2008 to 2012, 5 years, were the only team in the NFL that did not draft a single player out of the Southeastern Conference.
Wow.
Okay? That's 5 consecutive years. So, I mean, we had 2 guys from Mount Union, but none from Alabama? Come on. I mean, these are the decisions that form a franchise over time. Calais Campbell comes here, creates a culture in the locker room that's fantastic. Blake Bortles is playing pretty good. People forget that they beat Buffalo in the playoffs 10-3. Then they turn around and beat Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh, and Bortles threw 5 touchdown passes in that game, and they beat him like 44-41, something like that. But they decide that they're moving on from him, and they dismantle that team. They trade Calais Campbell to the Ravens, and the locker room goes immediately, because they didn't understand the impact that a player like that can have. Everybody was responsible to him. They got rid of Jalen Ramsey, and they should have. I mean, when you interview Jalen Ramsey, I don't know if you guys ever did that in Tallahassee. I mean, you walk away thinking, how does this guy find his way to his car every day? I mean, it's just amazing. But he was a bad cancer in that locker room. He poisoned the well for Leonard Fournette, by the way, and that's why they cut him, because Fournette wanted out after they let Ramsey out. So, I mean, just a lot of bad decision-making leads to this kind of morass that the Jaguars are kind of sitting in. And I hate to say it, but, save for a couple of years, the Jaguars have been an irrelevant franchise in the National Football League. They were 1 play away from the Super Bowl in 2017. And since then, they've been on a downward spiral without any kind of current look up where, hey, I can see where we're going.